Friday to you. It's a good Friday for me. We're getting ready for a weekend, and this should be exciting. But I wanted to put something on your mind before you leave for the weekend. Thank you for joining me. This is the 10 Commandments of Leadership. This is where we have emerging leaders and educate them, equip them, and empower them. This is also where we present current events and newsmakers in the light of best practices from the Bible. There's a word from the Lord in each of the current events that we now see. My name is Tim Alston. I'm a leadership strategist. God has blessed me to become a four-time Amazon best-selling author, and He's also blessed me to become a recovering egoholic. Yeah, a recovering egoholic, and I'll explain that shortly to you. I want to thank those of you who've been with us as we just went through an 11-step series on A Silver Path. We took the words A Silver Path and acronymed them to refer to different steps that we take along this emerging path to become the leaders that God and your communities intend for you to be. But before we go forward, we're about now to take a deeper dive, and that's why I have this segment called the 10 Commandments of Leadership. Before we take this deeper dive, I want to just step back for a second to gain some perspective so that we can move forward with a certain sense of energy and purpose. Let me go back and let me share with you some foundational things. This is not going to be a pretty episode for me. It's going to be kind of difficult for me, a kind of bloodletting for me, and I've called it the Egoholic Interrupted, how I discovered my most destructive addiction and what I'm doing about it. We're diving into a leadership struggle that is subtle, but it's sabotaging, and that's egoholism. Now, you've heard of egotism before, sure, but what about the deflated ego? Egotism refers to the big ego. But what about the deflated ego? What about the insecure one? The one that hides behind charm and talent and silence. Today I'm sharing with you this moment how I got exposed and the message that was born out of that exposure. But like I said, let's go back. Let's go back and reconnect with the headlines from just a few months ago, back in November of 2024. Where there was a 2024 election, there was a boxing ring, and a birthday parade to one's own life and leadership. So buckle up. You're not just about to hear a message, you're about to meet yourself. So let's get started. In November 2024 gave us a trifecta, a three-pronged headline that was just too wild for fiction. We had an incumbent Democratic Party that lost the White House in a dramatic fashion, losing 31 out of 50 states. We had a 58-year-old retired former heavyweight champion, Mike Tyson, was unanimously defeated in his return to the ring by a 27-year-old challenger. And then you had Donald Trump, against all the odds, staged a comeback for the ages, winning back the presidency. Now, these headlines all had one common denominator, and that's ego. Inflated egos, deflated egos, but certainly unmanaged egos. And I know the difference because unfortunately I've lived on both sides of that dangerous coin. This week, for example, on Tuesday in Iowa, former Treasury Secretary Pete Buttigieg made headlines when he blamed President Biden for the Democrats' losing the White House in last November's election. And I agree with him. My question is, why was Biden never primaried? Why did they let him enter that June 27th debate untested, only to get pummeled by Donald Trump? And then why dump that entire race into Vice President Kamala Harris's lap with just 103 days before Election Day? That was a sure prescription for defeat. But was that about inflated ego or deflated ego? Then you got Mike Tyson. You've got that former heavyweight boxing champ who was a boxing legend worth about $10 million. But he had fragile health history of late. And he went back into the ring against a 27-year-old. I can assure you it was not just to get that $20 million payout. It was ego. And then my third thing, why is Donald Trump now resurrected politically? Why is he floating the idea to us of an unconstitutional third term, his face on a $20 and a $250 bill? And why is he seeking to have a $45 million parade to honor his birthday? Once again, his ego. Nothing but ego, purely and simply. And unfortunately, I know something about that. Because 20 years ago, 23 years ago to be exact, my addiction to ego cost me a career opportunity that I thought would define me. But it did in another way. In fall of 2001, I left a contentious post as the director of public relations at Oakwood College. Why do I say it was contentious? I got fired. Simple as that. I was bruised, but hungry to prove my worth, who I was. So when I landed a six-figure consulting contract with a local IT firm, I thought to myself, finally, my worth is finally going to be recognized and compensated. But the truth of the matter was, I had no business in IT. My skills weren't a match for that. But my ego told me, Tim, fake it till you make it. Well, I did for 6 weeks. And then they fired me. In my exit interview, the client said to me, Tim, your problem isn't talent. It's that you needed help and you never asked for it. Now, as it turns out, at that time, I was being pursued by a coach named Mrs. Wynell T. This is a white woman from Lubbock, Texas, who had read my speaking samples and invited me into her professional speaker coaching circle. Something about her letter, which was addressed Dear Servant Letter, stuck with me, caught my attention. As fate would have it, that severance package that I received from those 6 weeks of consulting with that IT firm was just enough money to pay for her 2-day training session. Was that coincidence? No. Albert Einstein once said that coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. Coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. Now, when I got to the meeting in that session with her in Dallas, her first words to me were, what are you looking to gain from this session? Good. Now, let's pray about it. I wasn't ready for that. That simple inversion, goals first and prayer second, changed how I've approached every conversation from then on. For a day and a half, we met and we kind of sparred gently like two boxers in the early rounds. And then she landed a punch that I will never forget. She said, Tim, you're so articulate, so charismatic, and you have such a physical, commanding presence. But you've gotten away with that all of your life. You're used to sliding by on charm, charisma, articulation, and presence. That is until now. And almost involuntarily, I replied, yes. Yeah, I guess I'm just an egoholic trying to recover. Now, I had never, ever said those words before, but they just came out of my mouth. But once I said it, I couldn't unsay it. What she said to me, I'll never, ever forget. She said, Tim, and this is the woman who had just written a book about Zig Ziglar. She wrote the book entitled Zig Ziglar Difference. And if you're unfamiliar with that name, Zig Ziglar, I can tell you, Zig Ziglar was arguably the most popular and the most, probably the greatest, the GOAT of motivational speakers of the 20th century, Zig Ziglar. And she had written the book. She knew him. She had written the book on him as the gold standard of professional speakers. And she said something to me I'll never forget. She said, Tim, she said, hear me and hear me well. She said, believe me when I tell you, I have heard every kind of speech there is to hear. Every kind. But no one, and I mean no one, Tim, is talking about the issue of egos. That is your music. That is your spiritual DNA. Run with it. Wow. That marked the birth of this message. Shortly after my Dallas training, I gave my first talk on egoholism to a women's group. It was the Huntsville Junior League. For some reason, I invited my wife to join me. Bad idea, but God used it for good. On the way home from that address, she said nothing in the car. Her silence was deafening. Hours later, she appeared at my office door at home. She said, "You want feedback? Let me give you 4 bullets." And each of them was brutal. Number 1, she said, "You were talking to the wrong audience. Women don't have ego problems. You men do." Number 2, if people want to hear about addiction, they want to hear from someone who has overcome drugs, overcome alcohol, overcome gambling. You haven't overcome yours. Number 3, if someone's going to talk about addiction, let them be a professional. Let them be a doctor or a therapist or a pastor, not you. And number 4, this message is yours, not theirs. It's your burden, not theirs. Needless to say, I was devastated. I was bleeding emotionally. So I went for a long walk, and it was a cold March night. And I said, "Lord, I love this woman, and I love you. I need you to reconcile both assignments." Then came the breakthrough. What God showed me was how her thorns were actually tools. Her critiques were foundational to this message. Her words became the scaffolding for this egoholic recovering message. Over time, I learned from a clinical addictionologist that women do struggle with ego, not just inflated egos or egotism, but deflated egos, insecurities, low esteem, inadequacies. In many cases, their identity is tied to their husband's work or title. My wife, now ex-wife, was not wrong. She just had a limited view. Her second critique, "You haven't overcome it," became my strongest pillar. Egoholism isn't something to overcome. It is something to manage, like lawn care, like diabetes, how you manage those, like recovering itself. It is always ongoing. That's why I dropped the term ego recovery and adopted the term ego recovering. Her third point, my lack of credentials, God refuted by reminding me the world needs real voices, not just third person, some PhD trained experts, but people with first person scars. So I began saying in my talks, I'm not the doctor, I'm the patient. I'm not the professor, I'm the student. I'm not the pastor, I'm the sinner in the pew. I'm not the counselor, I'm the client. I'm not the attorney. I'm both the victim and the victimizer. And her fourth critique, that I should keep it to myself, no, wrong. The healing is in the revealing. The healing is in the revealing. That became step number 6 in my 7-step egoholic recovering framework. So now, what is egoholism, really? Egoholism is the subtle but destructive addiction to one's sense of self or ego. And because everyone has a sense of self, then everyone has an ego. That includes individuals as well as institutions. I first noticed it when I lived in Chicago, moved there in 1985. The whole city, to me, carried a second-class complex to New York City. Even their most famed comedy club was called Second City. Egoholism doesn't just mean arrogance, that's egotism. Egoholism is deeper than that. It's chronic insecurity, it's self doubt, it's overcompensation, it's self obsession in either direction. The result and the redemption became real simple for me. God allowed me, through her criticisms, to do several things. To when she criticized and said only women don't have ego problems and men do, it helped me to understand the fact that while most women would suffer from, let's say, sometimes that low esteem, or they also tie their identities, I said, to their husbands. So that helped me because I wasn't just talking about egotism. And God put that new word in me, egoholism. Holism, we understand from alcoholism. We understand that from workaholism, from chocoholism, from shopaholism. Egoholism is that addiction to self. Now, when she said in number two that people, if they want to hear about addiction, they want to hear about people who have been victorious. But what God showed me over and over again is that no, no, no. People want to see where you are in the struggle. The fact that you are still struggling with it gives hope to people. And my job was to give hope to people. So, yes, I'm still recovering. I'm not recovered. I'm still recovering. Okay. Step three, a criticism number three, point number three. She said, if I'm going to hear about addiction, I need to hear about it from a professional, a doctor, a lawyer. Well, one of the problems with that is that they can't speak about it like I can speak about it. I guess business would call that my unique selling proposition. I can talk about ego problems because it's me. It's not somebody else. It's not some detached person from the other side of the desk. I'm not, as I said, I'm not the doctor, I'm the patient. I'm not the professor, I'm the student. I'm not the pastor, I'm the sinner in the pew. I'm not the clinician or the therapist, I'm the client. I'm not the attorney, I'm the victim, and sometimes, unfortunately, the victimizer. So there had been in all of my research nobody that could address it from the other side of the desk, and that's me. And number four, when she said, keep that to yourself, that's your struggle. No, everybody is suffering from a sense of self. And we'll talk about that in succeeding episodes. And so her opposition, from her opposition came the insight for this whole new message. Actually, she shaped that message. I've learned that life is 10% of what happens to you, but 90% of how you choose to respond. What she said were facts. But what God said is, I'm going to take you beyond the facts because reality is something that we need to overcome. And so, out of my bruising came my blessings. From my ex-wife's opposition came the insight of a whole new message and eventually a whole new measurement system. What God is showing me, is helping me to create, is a whole new measurement system, because it's one thing to talk about ego problems, but the point is how can we get them resolved? And I'll talk about that in other episodes. What God has helped me to do is to create what I'm referring to as the egoholism measurement calculator for correction, EMC squared. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? EMC squared. It's my attempt to help leaders and organizations to quantify the invisible cost of inflated and deflated egos in the workplace. Because I've lived it. Because I still live it. I'm not cured. I'm recovering. That was tough. Thanks for tuning into the Tim Commandments for Leadership. If this message struck a nerve with you, good. That's what recovering egoholics like me need. Because egoholism, that addiction to one's own self, is not just a personality quirk. It's actually a leadership liability. If you're ready to go deeper, then visit my website at timalston.com. timolson.com. And, and soon I'll have up there different pieces, articles, posts to read about it. I'm excited about putting together this EMC Squared. It's the first tool of its kind to help leaders quantify the real cost of unmanaged egos. And remember, I'm not speaking from the podium of perfection. I'm broadcasting live from the recovering room. Until next time, stay humble, stay honest, and keep recovering one decision at a time. Keep growing. It is a steady process. You're going to learn a lot in these upcoming episodes as I share my experiences with you and share my exposures with you. As I said, not because I'm healed, no, but because I am healing. And I'm inviting you to walk with me and join me in this journey. Thank you for spending the time with me. Have a great weekend. Think about what I've shared. Go back and look at the replay again. Find yourself in that replay and understand the fact that this is a journey. It's not a destination. And together we can work it and make it happen. Hey, if you enjoyed what I've said, if you've been encouraged, if you've been informed by what I've said, then like it, share it, and subscribe. And remember my final words from the American Episcopal clergyman and author Philip Brooks. Don't ask for an easier life, ask to be a better person. Don't ask for power equal to your task, ask for a task equal to your power. I think I got that right. And when the work is done, the work will not be the miracle. You will be seen as the miracle. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend. I look to see you on Monday as we begin our first full week of the 10 Commandments of Leadership. Thank you. God bless. Bye-bye.